first of all, Diego, can you just tell us a little bit about you and your practice?
Well, my name is Diogo Machado, and my artist name is Adfuel, and I am from Portugal. My work revolves around, reinterpreting the visual aesthetic of tiles, mainly Portuguese tin glazed tiles called azulejo. But not only Portuguese, I have a large interest in reinterpreting and redesigning and rethinking different cultures from around the world, whenever it makes sense for me to work and rework with different aesthetics, different traditions, different inspirations, mainly based always in patterns. If it's a tile pattern, it's better, of course, but if it's not a tile pattern, then I'll adapt the aesthetic of, let's say, that specific pattern from that culture, which might be, let's say, a fabric pattern, and then I'll adapt it into my own aesthetic and make it look into more like a tile, because my work revolves largely around tiles. So as I mentioned, I am I'm an artist. I say artist in general. I do work quite a lot with street art and with public interventions and public installations, with murals, painted murals. I use stencil as one of my main techniques, just because it's so much easier to repeat the patterns with the stencil. It just makes it everything very, very, exactly the same as in terms of repetition. But I do also apply freehand techniques with spray, and one of the let's say techniques I also enjoy quite a lot and aim to do more and more. It's the properly tile installation as a tile mural, which has been happening quite a lot more in the recent years. The clients have, finally been able to have the good amount of budget to create tile installations, which are more expensive, obviously, than a painted mural. And so, me personally, and we as a studio, and the people that I work with in my studio, we are aiming towards having more and more tile installations as one of our focuses.
Yeah. And have you done quite a few of those recently? Oh,
Yeah, it's been at least two per year, which is good, like one, two per year. In the past years, we've been doing more and more of these tile installations, and we have been trying to create this tile installations, because in a way it just makes them more permanent, less ephemeral. Interesting enough, a painted mural is interesting enough. It's amazing. It's a beautiful art piece which can be created with some sort of ease. It's easily created within a city in terms of technique and logistics. Tile installation is more complicated to achieve, but it's also more permanent. It's something that it just stays. It lasts years, even decades, centuries. So even if it's painted over, it can also always be cleaned, and it's different than a tile than a painted mural, which once it's painted over needs to be repaired. Then if it's not possible, then it needs to be buffed. So I'm just trying to, in a way, be more faithful to what I've been working on. So if I've been working on the tile aesthetics, I'm just trying to be more faithful in that sense, and trying to create tile installations and just being more faithful to what I've initially worked on, that I've been working on.
yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah, I can imagine they look really striking as well in the ceramic. Yeah. So can I ask you next, how did you get into working on sort of public art and mural work, and what do you feel sort of helped you on this journey?
Well, I started to work on public art and in this kind of public installations or interventions. I've started to work in a very intuitive way, I want to say, because my first contact with public art and with, let's say, facing a wall was when I was, as a teenager. I was doing some graffiti, and I loved it, and I still love it to this day.
Mm.
Um, and I've done it for a few years. So I've always had this little there's always something inside me that I've always like felt was something that was interested in being outside and just creating something as a in the exterior, in the streets, let's say, in like living a city through the experience that one has while doing an intervention on it. So when I started to work with the tile aesthetic and just reinterpreting this style patterns, um, curiously enough, I was not initially. What I did was not immediately go into creating stencil murals or painting them. I started to work. So I tried to actually achieve the visual aesthetic of a tile in the studio. So once I actually created tiles in the studio, then that was the turning point for me to go back into the street and put the tiles back on the street. So because in Portugal we do have so many tile facades, and for me the tile is not only a construction element to be used inside a home, let's say, in a bathroom or in a kitchen. We use tiles as building facades, as it's something that for me it's outside. So as I mentioned, when I in the studio when I created my own tiles, then I felt like I should return them, put them back on the street again. And that was the approaching point for me into a more street art kind of interaction, uh, pretty much similar to the style of Invader from France. I had little tile pieces that I was placing in the streets in the streets of the cities that I visited. Um, but then this was Portugal, so no one really cares. It was just like a little bit of another tile there. That was funny enough. Um, and then some other projects, bigger projects started, like bigger murals started to appear. And as I just mentioned, the clients right now, luckily, I've been, reaching a point where the clients have the budget, but now, this was like 15, 16 years ago. And, the clients just wanted someone approaching me and wanted to do a mural, and they didn't have much budget. So I had to find a way to create this pattern repetition. So that's when the spray paint came in again into my life, and I was like looking at a mural again.
Yeah.
This time with a stencil and a spray can. I'm like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that the process was inverted. I started with the tiles, then I switched to stencil. Now going back to tiles again and doing both. So
yeah, that's really interesting how it's kind of come full circle like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And interesting about the tiles in Portugal. I've been to Portugal a few times, and obviously there is a lot of the exterior buildings are tiles, but we don't have that in England at all, really. It's not.
Yeah.
It's definitely an internal thing. But
it's a very Portuguese thing. Also, not only Portuguese, but it's very Mediterranean, I would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's Iberia. I want to say Iberian, from Portugal and Spain, from Iberia.
The sort of like Moorish influence of the architecture.
Exactly. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
Great. So next I'm going to ask you, what was your involvement in East Street Art's public art programme last year?
Okay, so that was my involvement with East Street Arts and the intervention I created was a very long project and process. Let's say, it started almost like 2 years before it was actually accomplished and painted, due to some pandemic that happened. Anyway, so it was curious enough. I was contacted by East Street to create a public intervention, and I immediately felt a connection there with Burmantofts, with the pottery, Burmantofts pottery. It was like such an amazing catalog that they have, and as I mentioned. it's always interesting to me to uh, not interpret the tile aesthetic of the azulejo from Portugal all the time. And I enjoy quite a lot switching colors, moving into different color palettes, moving to different tile aesthetics and drawing something different. And this was exactly what Burmantofts catalog allowed me to do, as an inspiration. Um, from the pottery, the vases, and also the tiles, obviously. So yeah, it was very interesting to create this installation, this mural called Echoes. It delves into the fact that echoes is something that it kind of it comes from one place to the other, an echo. So it was something that comes from the past into the present. Um, and what I've done is an echo of the actual Burmantoft catalog. So as an echo, this is what I created. This was like my idea for the mural itself, and then it has chromatic and patterns and elements inspired, obviously, as I just mentioned, from the Burmantoft catalog. Um, and I think it's just overall a very, very beautiful and amazing add on to the city. So I mean, I'm just trying to be modest here, but I'm very excited and happy with it. So.
No, it's really changed the area for us. Like I think it really stands out, and the positioning of it because it's on a slope.
Exactly.
And
it was quite a challenge, quite a challenging paint to paint on that slope.
Yeah.
It was also quite a challenge because of the weather as well. It was, my Mediterranean blood does not allow me to be in the cold for long, and I was freezing most of the time. I was putting layers and layers of clothing. So that was fun.
Well, it looks stunning, and it has. I would say it's really changed the area. It's added so much color, and I think there's been a lot of really positive feedback on it. So
I'm happy to hear that. It's amazing. Yeah, I mean, while we were painting, this was painted by me and my assistant. There were two of us. While we were painting, we had great feedback from the people in the area walking by and passing by and just saying, "Oh, this is beautiful." So I'm glad to know it. It's just it maintains the colorness. I don't know if this is the word.
It definitely does. Yeah. And actually building on that, I know originally, way back before the pandemic, when we first started talking about this project, I think we were originally going to involve some school groups and various sort of participants in the project, which obviously, due to the nature of things being so delayed, we didn't have time for in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
But I just wanted to ask, in terms of sort of working with and in communities with your work, how do you think sort of artists and communities can successfully work together? Is that something you've done in your practice before? And how do you think that works best?
Well, artists and communities working together, it's always something that has to be I want to say, I'm kind of missing the word here. It has to come from the community. Half of it has to come from the community, half of it has to come from the artists, so that they can meet in the middle and actually work together. This specific project that we were going to include participation of the schools as well. We were going to do a workshop, and this would have created a whole lot more meaning into the actual intervention itself. As you just mentioned, we were not able to do this because of the schedule, and the timing was just so delayed that we were not able to include these other fact elements that we wanted to include, these other the participation of the community, more of specifically the participation of the school. We wanted to include workshops. We wanted to have a little talk about Burmantofts pottery, to have the kids kind of get to know what was done in the area before as the Burmantofts factory and all this. So the fact that I was willing I was willing to be proactive in that sense, and I believe that the kids would have loved it too. And then as I just mentioned, we would have met in the middle, obviously. So this is the way that I feel that artists and communities need to work together. The artist needs to have a story to tell, needs to have something to say about the community, needs to have like this. The artist needs to have this, as I just said, a story to tell, but it needs to kind of be willing to show something to the community that they kind of were missing, or they didn't pay much attention. This is the role of art, is to pay attention to something, is to create awareness, right? This for me, this is what I always explore, creating awareness towards something. And the community needs to be open to have it needs to be open to this, to receive this information, and to be open to explore it. So I would have loved for this to happen. Who knows if we can do it in the future? Who knows?
Is it something you've done before in any of your other work, working with schools or different groups?
Yeah, we've done some community works. When I say we, it's like me and the people that work with me, obviously. We've done a beautiful workshop in Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. Yeah, so this was we did a beautiful stencil workshop, again with the tile and with the tile stencil. Portugal and Brazil, they do have quite a lot of connection with this, and we have this in common. So maybe I'm forgetting some more, but anyway, this is just an example, and it's always interesting. People just it's very much face-to-face feedback when people say, "Oh, I love this. This means something to me." And you're like, okay, as an artist, I think, well, my job here is done. I've opened the eyes of someone, and I'm I'm okay with it, and I'm good. You know what I mean? Yeah, yeah.
And I know, because in public art generally, I think there's a lot of debate about how much a neighbourhood has ownership over a piece of art. And
Oh, for me, it's quite simple. The answer: the neighborhood owns the piece. Once the piece is finished by the artist, it's owned by the neighborhood.
Yeah, yeah.
That's for me. It's as simple as that. When I finish one of my pieces, one of my paintings, one of my tile installs, whatever, it's not owned by me anymore. Yes, it's signed or whatever, but it's not. It's from that moment on, it's part of the neighborhood. It's part of the people that pass by that street every day to go to work. It's part of the people that live in the building across the street or whatever. It's not owned by me anymore. So, and I love the fact that and this is something that I love, that it happens. It's out there. It belongs to the world. It belongs especially to the neighborhood.
Yeah.
To the community. Yeah.
And I guess ideally, if we had been able to do the school workshops and things with this project, that the local community might have felt they'd been part of the process as well, which is always a nice thing to do, to get them involved at the start as well as yeah. Great. Well, we'll move on to talking about international side of things. So I guess really for us, it's just about asking, how do sort of international artists and arts organisations develop sort of partnerships? I think obviously when we were looking for a mural for this area and looking at the pottery side of things, we came across you, and there was just a natural synergy between you and what we were aiming for. But in terms of your other commissions and the international work that you do, how does that sort of happen?
Well, I believe, I mean, in terms of working internationally, for me, it's interesting that, as I mentioned, it's for me, it's all about the tiles and mainly about the Portuguese tiles, the azulejos. But the fact that I have the chance to explore other cultures, other traditions, other aesthetics, it's just like the cherry on top. You know what I mean? So it's just amazing. And what happened with East Street, and what happens with some other organizations and clients and projects that I do, I believe the thought process is the same, and there's some sort of tradition pattern tradition or tile tradition from that city or from that country, and people see my work and say, okay, this artist is able to focus on what was done, uh, think about what can be done, and rework that and create something new. Even if he's Portuguese, let's bring him over and bring him into our country and allow him to rework our tradition and our culture. And for me, it's very rewarding. Obviously, it's something just like makes me really happy and grateful that people allow me to rework their tradition and their history, and make it somehow my own, obviously, but then give it back to the community, give it back to the street, and put it back on the street on a large scale mural that everyone can see. And there's a story. There's a story behind it. Obviously, the story is that this was previously done by this pottery house, or was done by our grandmother, etc., etc. And she used to do this, and now it's kind of lost. And then this artist comes over, rethinks that, creates something different, puts it on the wall. Obviously, I do my own style. Always I do these rips and the cuts and the layering, and I create the layers of history, which is the layering effect and all this. So obviously, it's very rewarding for me, and I think that the thought process is quite similar. I want to say, so I've done recently, well, not recently, but a couple years ago, in the US, I've done Cincinnati. They also they had rookwood pottery. Very interesting, same thought process logically in terms of idea, reworking rookwood pottery. But rookwood is actually something that it's still very active to these days. I went into the factory, I met everyone there. They were super happy that I was reworking their catalog into something, and when I was in Scotland, I found these little tile panels that were on the floor, on the entrance of the old houses. So then I took these little tile panels from the floor and I put them into this big mural. These are some of the stories that can be told, told. These are some stories that can be rewritten, I want to say. And I'm very happy to do this.
Yeah, I guess ceramics and tiles are quite a universal thing as well. There is in a lot of different countries. They get all used differently, but there is that kind of universal connection, and then being able to show that through your work is really nice.
Yeah, I've done a very rewarding project as well in Tunisia. I mean, Tunisia just has these beautiful, beautiful ceramics and beautiful aqua tone and blue tone ceramics, very similar to the Portuguese actually. And I've done almost like an entire. Right now it's almost looking like an entire street covered in tiles, and it's actually a tile project. And we want to do more in the future in the same street. So I mean, there's always a story to be told, So so just as a curiosity, one of the first since we are talking about working internationally, one of the first travels that I did out of Portugal to paint somewhere else was in France, in Mulhouse. Okay. And in Mulhouse, they don't have the tile tradition, but they do have the Mulhousienne, which is a textile pattern. So and they have different Mulhousienne as textile patterns. And that was something that I retold that story. I took the Mulhousienne, I reworked them into a pattern, and I put them on the wall, So that was interesting as well. Yeah. Same thing for Norway. Norway, they had rosmaling. Rosmaling is something that's embroidered, in fact, in textile as well. But a very old tradition they have. And then I took these rosmaling patterns and created tile patterns with them, so there's always something that can be told as a story. Just the fact that people allow me to do this is just amazing.
That's great, and we feel it's really important, obviously, to not only nurture the talent we have in Leeds and in England, but also to bring international talent so that we can show something else and bring a new perspective. So yeah, I feel that that is something that's important within, well, across all art forms, but particularly with public
Of
art.
course. Well, same way that English artists come to Portugal to create
Yeah.
projects and to paint, it's an interchange, it's a change of culture, it's a change of people that just move.
So the last sort of theme we were going to talk about was a bit more challenging probably, but to do with climate change and sort of climate action. We're trying to be, I guess the whole world is, but I know that especially in the UK, we're trying to be much more conscious of our sort of ethics around what materials we use and how we're kind of contributing to sort of global issues. But so and obviously public art is something that's can be quite difficult in terms of being climate friendly as well with materials.
Yeah.
We're just interested if that's something that you consider in your studio and with your team, and how you think that might look going forward. How do we try and reduce the sort of carbon footprint of public art, as it were?
This is I mean, reducing a carbon footprint anywhere in the world with any practice, it's difficult, right? It requires a lot of change. It requires a lot of thought. It requires a lot of attention. And it's personally, to what I do in the studio, to what we do, it's what we can do. What we do is start with the small things. Changing the Scotch tape from the plastic one to the paper one. We do the small things. The small things can be done. The big things are difficult. The main things, I want to say. So unless someone manufactures a CO2 free spray can, we cannot go around. We cannot move around not using spray cans. So you know what I mean? So the big things, the main things are difficult. And this is when I say this for me as an artist. Other artists will have other opinions. If they use if there's specific artists that use specific kind of paint with a brush, that paint can be changed into something more sustainable. But spray cans, spray cans are spray cans. Unless I'm dependent on a manufacturer. It's difficult. And with the tiles themselves, tiles are clay, they're fired. They're glazed. There's a process with inks, with paints, also with high temperature paint and all this. In the studio, there's not much we can do. It's like it's achieving a specific result. And with a technique that's been going on for years, there's no way to change this process, or else the end result will be different. So it becomes quite difficult for me to have this conscience. Again, we can do the small things. We can use paper bags instead of plastic bags. We can do these different things, and then recycle everything, and then have different recycle bins for different materials. Again, the big things are very, very difficult.
So the final bits really are, because we're hoping to do some work going forward around working with artists that maybe haven't worked in the public realm before, and helping them to develop their practice so that they can do in the future. So I wanted to ask from your experience, do you think there is many opportunities out there for sort of new and aspiring public artists, and what would you think would help them achieve being able to work on scale and outdoors? What are the things that help to do that, I guess?
No, to be honest, I don't think there are enough artists for new and upcoming artists these days. And I feel that if East Street wants to create these opportunities, I am 100% in agreement with that. I feel that there's got to be more opportunities, more events, more I want to say not a, again, I'm missing the word here because of translation. It's not a contest, but something that like an event that brings in people and brings them in a way that create a mock-up, create a project for something that you can turn into a reality in a mural or in a sculpture. So I feel that this kind of initiatives, initiatives, that's the word I was looking for. So initiatives may be the. I feel that there are not enough. So if East Street is, willing to create that, that's truly amazing.
I think it's about building up your confidence to do it, because I can imagine it takes quite a lot of confidence to do something of scale on an outdoors.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course, someone that doesn't know how and where to start. If this artist is starting and they want, even if not starting the artistic practice, but starting the public art practice. I mean, there are examples of artists that have been working as an artist for 5-10 years and have never done anything in the public art realm, and then they've done this one project and all of a sudden it's amazing and they start to do more. So even if it's the starting point for an artist that is actually starting a career or just starting in the public art realm and circles, why not create the opportunity? There's another side to it, and what I mean is creating public art, creating street art. It's just easy as going outside and doing it, obviously. It can be a paste up, it can be a stencil, it can be whatever, it can be a spray can creating something, brushes, anything is possible, anything is valid. But to have the opportunity to create something in a large scale, something that's thought, something that has a line of thought, something that has a story to tell, something that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, something that is done thinking about the community, something that is done, with a specific goal. That's something always that has to have the impulse of an association or someone behind all of this. And if East Street is willing to do this and create these opportunities, I feel like that's amazing.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think because we're hoping to use these interviews that we're doing as well to help sort of inspire sort of newer artists as well. So that's really valuable. Thank you. My final question just before we finish would be, where would you like to go next with your practice? Do you have a sort of ultimate ambition or place you want to work or thing you want to do? Dream project?
Well, yeah, to be honest, yes. So I want to go back inside again. So yes. So what I mean is, one of my goals that I'm aiming towards right now. So I've done studio, and then I moved out of the city into the street, and I keep on doing. I still obviously want to do more and more public art and street art projects, but I want to go back inside, and I want to back inside into the museum. So my goal is going to some sort of museum, and it's been happening slowly. There's some connections being made, so I want to go back in, and I want to go into a museum. I feel like that's the goal for now. So, but always keeping, and I want to make this very clear, always keeping street art, always doing murals, always doing the exterior work, always doing the public art. But I feel like museum is the next big step, and having a good museum would be, having my work in a good museum would be the next step. So, it's always baby steps. As an artist and as a career, it's always baby steps. So
I can see that happening, definitely. And you've got some great museum, well, in Portugal, Spain, everywhere. So
so who knows? I'm not picky about the country,
I'll let you know if I hear of anything here.
Okay, good.